everybody, Creative Katie Karen Burchill here. Welcome to my channel. Today, an art journal tutorial. This one is in my Faces DIY journal, and I'm going to show you how to print, well, pretty much anything, onto tissue paper. So if you wanted to know, here's where you go. Now, this picture is one that I actually sketched myself, and I'm really proud of it because that's been a challenge. I watched a video from Karen Campbell. Now, what I did, once I had this in my sketchbook, I photocopied it and I did it in multiple sizes and basically made my own digi art. You can scan it and do the same. This way I can reuse the picture again and again, and if it I can also try and improve and work on the same skill and do different things with the same picture. So I've got a size that I think is going to work in my DIY Faces journal. And if you want to see the video where I repurpose a paint catalog from a hardware store, I'll put that link in the iCard. So here I am using tissue paper. Now here is what you need to do. Take your tissue paper, regular dollar store tissue paper, flatten it as much as you can. You'll see that there are wrinkles and you are going to tape it onto copy paper. Don't attempt going right to the edges. You want all the tape to be inside that page. And you do want to take time to press out as many of those wrinkles as you can. I've heard people say that they've lightly ironed on a low heat the tissue paper. You can do that, and that might increase your odds of removing any of the wrinkles. For the purpose of the face, I'm not too worried. Now, printing on tissue paper, you're going to have to figure out how your printer works best, how you put this in the machine. Everyone's different, and I can't really speak to that. I just put it in the tray and it feeds through. Now, where the tape is, you do not want any of your images to be where the tape is to the outside. So you're going to have to place it in the center, not off to the side like that. Watch out for the tape because that isn't going to be able to be transferred. So you want it on the center. Now I put it through the printer and it worked. I also added a couple of sentiments on here. Not sure of at this point that I was going to use them. I do end up using the one bloom. I avoided the tape, so I'm quite happy with that. Now, it is on the copy paper, and cut out whatever image or sentiment. Keep it on the copy paper to do that. It just stabilizes it and makes it so much easier. Now, the reason I'm printing this out on tissue paper instead of copy paper, which you've seen me do before, is I want whatever's in the background to come through when I glue down the sentiment. So whatever colors in the background, whatever textures in the background, you're going to be able to see that. And I thought that would be helpful. It was a bit challenging for me. This is something that I have not done before with faces. So it was a bit of an experiment, but I'm constantly challenging you to try new things. So I need to do that myself. So now I've got all those images cut out, my sketch. Now I've got to figure out the background. Now, since I picked that sentiment bloom, I decided to go through my napkin collection, and I picked this napkin. Love the colors. I'm seeing how much of that's going to shine through, and I'm not really liking having the flowers on her face. So I'm thinking, okay, what parts of the napkin, where am I going to put this napkin? So I grab my liner brush and I'm going to watercut the napkin. Now, other videos in my napkin series playlist show this in more detail, me cutting out the napkin. I'm just giving a quick view of the process, and I'm just isolating certain elements. You can cut them out, layer them up however you want. And previous to using the water cutting these out, I took off the excess layers of white napkin. And you're going to want to do that as well. So off camera, I cut this out and I decided I'm going to put in 2 corners. And I'm going to glue this down. Now, this DIY art journal has been gessoed. And that's going to allow me to use different mediums on it. Now I'm using fluid matte medium to glue this down. Now wherever the napkin is, it's going to go translucent. I'm really liking the white in this background. We've got these really bright, vivid colors. And I'm still trying to figure out exactly how I want to place my girl. Now, because this background was just gessoed and it wasn't completely opaque, I wanted to whiten it up. So I'm just using a makeup sponge and some white acrylic paint just to push back anything that's on the background, because my goal right now isn't to get too elaborate with the background. I know that's really different for me. I grabbed the Garden Gate stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. This is the only stencil I'm using, so you can use something similar. I just wanted some interesting pattern, and I'm looking for colors, and I'm going, okay, I love that green that's in the foliage. I'm just going to use green. This is yellow green and hooker's green that I'm mixing on the makeup sponge. And I'm loving the color combination. That green with those bright colors of the napkin are really popping. And this is just an example of every background doesn't have to be complicated. Now, as I place the girl there, I decide I want to extend the pattern a little bit, and I want to really play up the difference in the 2 greens that I'm using. So I'm placing the stencil back on and adding to it now that I know where this girl is going. And I don't want to put too much color where the face of the girl is going, because again, this is tissue paper. When I glue it down, everything's going to show. And while I wanted that, I did struggle with it. But this is the first time I've done it, and I got some ideas on what I would do differently next time. So I'll keep experimenting in this Faces journal with that. What I've learned here, I'm going to apply moving forward. So I've added that. This keeps a lot of that white space. We've got variation in the green color just by mixing the paints. And I have my girl sketch that I printed onto tissue paper. So now I'm going to put a healthy dose of the matte medium fluid down, and you can see where it has gone translucent, and you can see the stenciling in the hair. And I'm loving that effect. And here's a still of it. And when I looked back at this and was editing the video, I really like how the face is coming out. So I got an idea that I will do next time. I'll glue the face down first, then stencil on top. Maybe use texture paste that may have been colored, and that would wrap around, and I would keep the girl just kind of peeking through. But that's not what I did on this page. I wanted to paint out the hair. So I've watered down my brown paint here, and I'm painting the hair. And I chose brown because the yellow really wouldn't show, and the brown gives good contrast to what's happening in the rest of the page. You can still see the stenciling coming through a little bit. I would have, before I printed my sketch, I would have outlined it with a marker so that I had bolder lines to follow. A lot of them got pushed back a lot as I proceed shading and colorizing the face. So I would do that. I would trace my sketch with marker to get bolder lines when I use the tissue paper, and that will make things easier. So you can benefit from my learning. But remember, I can't learn these things unless I do them. So I've mixed up some paint to colorize. And of course, right now it's looking a little too dark, and I do struggle a bit here. This is not going to be a tutorial on how to mix paint for different flesh tones. This is not a tutorial on how to do this right. I'm figuring it out. This is a tutorial on take the leap, jump, try, experiment, and learn. Everything I learned about art journaling, I learned by doing and by making mistakes. So I'm going back and I'm lightening, I'm adding more gesso, I'm adding light spots. I'm looking back at my original sketch to see where the shading is and trying to duplicate that. And I admit this was a struggle. I'm painting out the whites of the eyes. I mixed alizarin crimson and some orange to get the same color that's in the flowers from the napkin. And here's where some of the precision of my sketch got lost because I didn't trace it with the marker. I chose to paint the eyes the same green as the background, so it all works together. But my girl definitely went through an ugly stage, and that's okay. Painting the eyebrows with my liner brush. And then I'm going in and I'm trying to shade. I'm looking at my original and trying to get some shading. For here, I'm shading with brown using my um, the floating acrylic technique that you've seen me use. But you'll notice my eyes aren't perfectly aligned. They're not the same shape. The the nose isn't, it's not perfect. And that's okay. So I'm adding highlighted areas, lighter areas, bringing out the darkness. I did stop the camera. I admit it. I did stop it and work this to get it to a point where I was happy. I was getting very frustrated. Now I'm shading the hair with some black and darker brown. And when you start shading, it does come to life. My sketch had ears. Somehow I lost those. And here when I've started using the black to shade with, I find it really started to come more to life. And I'm just trying. If you put something on and it doesn't work, as you're going to see me doing, you can take a baby wipe and wipe it off. Everything underneath here is acrylic, so it's all removable. Or if it dries, you can add a layer of gesso and paint over it till you get it right. And remember, I've got more of the same sketch because I photocopied it. So it was a lot of back and forth. I grabbed my charcoal pencil and I started outlining the pupils of the eyes, the lips. This was really good. Not sure the charcoal pencil was the best to use, but it allowed me to do a little more shading. Now the charcoal pencil will reactivate if you put wet stuff on it afterwards. So you need to remember that. If you use a Stabilo oil pencil, the same deal, or watercolor pencil. If it's water activated, it will activate with water. So if you're gluing stuff down afterwards, you gotta be wary. I use the charcoal pencil to make my eyelashes. They look, I just laugh. They got a little out of hand, but for the most part, I just left it. That's something I can improve on. Every time you do it, you learn something and you move that forward. And you take that to the next page. Now, the neck looked a little bit too long, so I decided I'm going to glue down the same flower over top of the other one, and it will overlap the girl. Gluing down the tissue sentiment, and you can see how the green comes through. And then gluing down that flower so it overlaps the face and hides my elongated neck. Now I'm using some white gesso and various colors that match the flowers, and I'm just going over all the flowers from the napkin, getting kind of a painterly effect. This makes them bolder and brighter, and it looks like you painted it as opposed to just glued something down. And I like that look. But if you like the look before, without it, the colors were very bright and bold. It was fine. I just added a few more flowers here. The napkin that I used here comes from NinnysNapkins. She also has the Garden Gate stencil available. So if you like this page or like the patterns that you see, the napkin or the stencil, that's where you can go and check it out. You can also get my sentiment pack, which is through the Garden Gate where I got the bloom sentiment from. Edging the page with black just to frame the page. This always just makes it work so much better. Of course, let everything dry before you do that. Otherwise, you're going to smear. And remember, anywhere you put the charcoal pencil will reactivate, so be careful. Removing the tape, just adding a little more shading some of the flowers as well. Now the bloom, it just was a little too, I wanted it more opaque black, I guess. So I grabbed my fine line applicator bottle that has black acrylic paint that's been thinned, and I'm just going to fill in the sentiment. This gives it a little bit of dimension and makes it more opaque black and stand out against the background. I'm adding some detail to the centers of the flowers. Just little finishing things. And then I'm using the fine line applicator to do some sketchiness with it. And I'm thinking maybe I could use that with the eyelashes somewhere down the line. So here I'm just adding little sketches with the fine line applicator. I've never done this part. I've doodled with it, but here I'm just kind of brushing it quickly, and I'm rather liking the effect. It's very imperfect. So let me know if you try printing on tissue paper and how you made out. I hope you do give it a try. It's a great skill or technique to have. So now let's recap. So I used the napkin for part of the background really, or part of the thing. I also I stenciled some shape on, keeping a lot of white space. I also printed on the tissue paper for the page, basically made my own digital download from my own sketch. I colorized my focal image and I shaded. I painted over the focal image, the flowers, to get a painterly effect. I put the sentiment onto tissue paper and I made it bolder with the fine line applicator bottle, and I edged the page. Thanks so much for joining me. Close-ups are coming. Give me a thumbs up. Follow me on Instagram. Until next time, go get creative.